Brilliant. Well, thank you very much indeed. What a kind introduction from my old mate, Philip Hollowbone. He's right. I haven't changed at all in 40 years. I was impossible then, and I'm implacable now, because I have spent 20 years of my life fighting and campaigning, standing in election after election, some with success, many with failure, but I've done it because I believed that this transfer of powers from our country, from our parliament, from our courts to these EU institutions is not what my mother and father voted for back in 1975. Not at all. And it is not a question that I have ever been asked. And I believe we should make our own laws in our own country. I believe we should control our own borders. I believe our courts are the ones that should be supreme. And I believe that the best people to govern Britain are the British people themselves. So after 20 years of doing this, and at times being really pretty worried that I might finish up as the patron saint of lost causes, and it's been a pretty lonely old game, I can't tell you how long I've waited for this day. This means more to me than anything I've done in my political career. To be on this platform, with a group of people who recognise that actually party politics is meaningless compared to the importance of getting back the control of our nation. I'm proud to be here with all of them. To be here with a group of people who are putting country before party, a group of people who are putting conscience before career, to be here with a group of people at the start of what is going to be a massive public campaign that we're going to roll out across this country, and a group of people who recognise that this is so important that it's not about left or right, but it's about right or wrong. And we know what's right, and we must win this referendum. Now, we do, of course, have a fairly considerable enemy, by which I don't mean Brussels. I don't even mean Mr. Van Rompuy, although it's fair to say that I'm not on his Christmas card list. No, the enemy isn't Brussels. The enemy, as Kate said, isn't Europe. We're not against Europe. We love Europe. We're happy to go on holiday there. Some of us are happy to drink their wine. We buy and sell motor cars with each other. We love Europe. What we're against is the idea of all these different nation states being forced against their will into this straitjacket of one-size-fits-all administered by the bureaucrats of Brussels. And believe me, this meeting today, there will be tens of millions of people across Europe who see it on their national televisions and through the internet that will be cheering us on, because we have the honour to be the first country in this union to have the opportunity to say we don't want political union. Friendship and free trade, but not this. And I think in many ways, ironically, we are the true Europeans, because we recognise that a Europe of different countries, different cultures, different languages, different histories, different cheeses, that's a good Europe, provided it's democratic and it trades together. So I hope that when Britain does exit itself from this political union, that it's followed by the rest of Europe too. I look forward to a better, happier, freer Europe. Now, our enemies aren't in Brussels. Our enemies are in Westminster. Our enemies are indeed in parts of Canary Wharf. I'll come to him in a moment, sir. Just wait. Just wait. And what we're going to see over the next few months, paraded on television, are our political class. People who didn't tell us the truth back in 1975. People who told us that if we didn't join the euro, investment would dry up into this country. So we'll get a parade on television. We'll see Ken Clarke. That's not a bad start, actually. Try this one. We'll see Nick Clegg. We'll see Peter Mandelson. And top of the list, we'll see Tony Blair. And they'll be on television telling us we have to be part of this club, selling us the fear story. And the fear story is, if we're not part of this union, they will not buy our goods. All trade will cease. Jobs will be lost. That is what we're going to hear from them. And actually, do you know what? They may try to scare us. But actually, I think the common sense of British people is such that we understand just how many German motor cars are on our roads. We understand that they sell us more than we sell them. We're beginning to understand that we are the Eurozone's biggest trading partner in the world. I think we understand that actually they need us far more than we need them. Our campaign needs to be a positive one. Our campaign needs to be on the basis that actually the reason they've given all this power away. And I saw this face to face when I debated with Nick Clegg in 2014. And we were talking about trade. And Nick said, we have to be part of this big EU club to negotiate trade deals. Britain on its own simply isn't big enough. And I responded by saying that Iceland, with a population of 320,000 people, had just signed a trade deal with China. I was damn certain if Iceland was big enough, then the United Kingdom was big enough to negotiate its own trade deals. But actually, I realised at that moment something that I perhaps hadn't seen as fully and as clearly before. And we'll see it on those TV sets when we see Clark and Clegg and Mandelson and Blair, and we'll hear it from the Prime Minister. What they mean, ladies and gentlemen, isn't that we're not big enough. They don't think we're good enough to run our own country. What, do you think we're good enough to run our own country? Well, I think we're good enough to run our own country because I believe in Britain. I believe in the British people. I know that freed from this club, not only will we have a simple trade deal with Europe, but we'll be able to re-engage on the world stage and make our own trade deals with whomsoever we choose. And wouldn't it make sense that a very good first port of call would be a group of countries within whom there are 2.2 billion people, where English is the primary language, where they have common law, where they actually like us, and let's re-engage with our friends in the Commonwealth. Wouldn't that make sense? And politically, we'll be better off out, because think of this. Every single European law that is made, and anybody in this room who's part of the 5 million small businessmen and businesswomen will know what I'm talking about. It's not that every single law that Brussels makes is balmy. Some of them are probably quite sensible. But whether they're good pieces of law or whether they're bad pieces of law, there is nothing the British government, there is nothing our 651 MPs, there is nothing all of you can do to change a single piece of European legislation, because the sole right to propose law and the sole right to repeal law rests with the unelected European Commission. You cannot be an independent, self-governing nation and a member of this European Union. And I'm sorry, but I believe that those that went before us and twice in the 20th century risked or sacrificed everything they had. They did it so that we could be a free, independent democracy, and I want that back. So we'll be better off economically, able to make our own trade deals, not squandering over £50 million a day as a contribution. We could build a new district hospital every week in this country for the cost of our EU contributions. I know which I'd prefer, and I'm sure you do too. But crucially, absolutely crucially, the key issue that I believe will win us this referendum is the fact that as a member of this union, we now have an open door to nearly 500 million people, any of whom can come into our country. Now, the levels of immigration into Britain have been too high. Governments have promised they would control it to tens of thousands a year. We know net migration is running at 1/3 a year. And that's if you believe the official figures, which incidentally, I don't. Too many people coming into a country too quickly has driven down the wages for ordinary workers in Britain. Has put intolerable pressure on primary school places, the health service, all of our vital public services. But what it's also done is to change many communities in our market towns and in even our cities in a way that is unrecognisable. If immigration is to work, it has to be at a rate and a level whereby people speak the same language and can integrate. And we can't do that. We can't do that. We can't do that as members of the European Union. So only by leaving this European Union, only by leaving this political union, can we take back control of our borders. And once we've done that, we can then put in place an Australian-style point system so that we can decide who comes to Britain. And yes, we want good people. We want skilled people. We want people to come who bring their own health insurance. We want people to come who haven't got criminal records, but we need to control the numbers. But I think it's now even more serious than that. 2 of those Paris murderers got back into the European Union posing as migrants coming through the Greek islands. The best way to ensure ourselves against future terrorism is to take back control of our borders. And I don't know about you, but I think what we saw happening on New Year's Eve in Cologne was genuinely shocking. Now, there's no room for complacency here. We know that in this country, dreadful things have taken place in towns like Rotherham. But perhaps to see what was happening with 1,000 young men in public sexually molesting women in the street, I think was a very great shock. And the truth is, ladies and gentlemen, that the European Union has made a massive, massive error with its open door policy to anyone that wants to come. An error compounded hideously by Angela Merkel. But bear this in mind. Those 1,000 young men outside Cologne train station on New Year's Eve will in 3 to 4 years all have German passports, which means they'll be able to come to our country. And I'm sorry, I'm a great believer in helping those around the world in need, but it's time to put the interests of men and women and our communities first, and we only do that by taking back control. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Against us, there'll be Goldman Sachs. Against us, there'll be most of our political class and sections of the media. But I don't really care how many big banks and big politicians are against us, because this campaign, it's perfectly clear, it is people against the politicians. It is the people of this country that need to rise up. It is the people of this country. It is the people of this country that need to take back that's given away. Our politicians never had the authority to give away this amount of power. Our politicians have handed us over to an organisation with a flag and an anthem and a police force and an organisation that intends to build its own army. Our politicians have literally given away our country, and I want my country back. In fact, I'd say